Hey everyone, I'm going to be giving you a short presentation on positionality statements, how to write them, and why they're important. So the first thing is, what is a positionality statement? So positionality is a researcher's worldview on their research topic. It's also known as how the researcher's worldview shapes the scope of their study. For example, how their background, how their identities, how their experiences, how their values, and how their assumptions affect their research. Positionality is really important because researchers need to be conscious of how their biases, values, and experiences affect their research, and they need to talk about these within the research paper through what is known as reflexive comments, also known as positionality statement. So positionality is also known as reflexivity. So what do we do about it? In research, we must acknowledge our own positionality or our own biases, and we must be conscious of our own biases and values and experiences and how they affect our research. So, for example, let's say that I'm a woman and I'm in a long distance relationship with my boyfriend. And let's say, I know all about, being a woman and being in a long distance relationship, but my research is on men being in long distance relationships with women and their views of the long distance relationship. In my research, I would want to write a statement talking about, as a woman, I have my own beliefs about long distance relationships, but I'm looking to get the male perspective on long distance relationships. So you would want to talk about how your specific biases or values contribute to your research. This could be racial background, ethnic background, religious background. It could be sexual orientation, um, income, anything sort of like that. All of those go into how you see your research and how your research affects you. And so you want to make these comments explicit. If you went in with a certain bias, you want to talk about that. You want to try to eliminate all biases by talking about them and acknowledging them in your paper. So you need to state your positionality within your paper, and you can do this in a variety of different ways. You would want to write your statement, and you can put it really anywhere that you want, wherever you think it fits. So, for example, you could put it in the introduction. You could talk about why you're interested in this research. Maybe you could give some background on yourself, how you've always wanted to know about this certain group for whatever reason. You could put it in your methods section as a rationale for your study. You could even put it in your discussion when you're talking about your analysis. You could also include multiple positionality statements throughout your entire paper. You could include it at the end of your study in your conclusion. And there's also something called a personal vignette, and that is a little paragraph before your paper even starts where you talk about your positionality and you give kind of an introduction to the introduction in a way. It's not a part of your paper necessarily, it's just a personal statement. And so all of these ways are ways that you can include your positionality in your paper. So now I'm going to give you an example from my own research. For my qualitative methods class with Professor Lawless, I wrote a research paper examining youngest siblings in college that have multiple older siblings, at least two. And so here's my positionality statement. As an oldest sibling in college with three younger siblings, I understand and am aware of the roles and responsibilities that surround being the oldest sibling, but I lack any understanding of what it is like to be the youngest sibling and how they experience their life differently. I wanted to understand more about what the youngest sibling experienced, how their relationship with their siblings has changed over time, and how they described their relationship with their siblings. So notice, I did my research on youngest siblings and I'm an oldest sibling. So I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that I have a different experience from youngest siblings because I'm the oldest, and I have a completely different viewpoint on the roles and responsibilities surrounding being a sibling in a different birth order. So I talk about that. I mention it, and I mention my lack of understanding here, and that is what is considered your positionality. So I'm going to pull up my paper now and show you where it is, where I put it. So here's my positionality statement. I actually included my positionality in my literature review of the literature, and after it's after all of the review, and It's in the critique of the literature. So here's how I frame it. So I talk about the critique of the literature in the literature review itself. Then I move into my positionality statement right here. And then I say, considering these limitations and the literature and my positionality as an older sibling, I plan to conduct a qualitative research study using the following research question. And there's the question. So I chose to put it in with my review of the literature. You could put it in your introduction. You could say, depending on how your introduction is structured, you could say, I'm an older sibling and I've always been interested in what youngest siblings are like and how they view their relationship with their older siblings. You could put it in the conclusion, you could put it in your discussion, you could even include it in a personal vignette before the actual paper begins. It's really up to personal preference. But the important thing to remember is you must include your positionality. The researcher needs to put a statement where they talk about their view of the research and how their background shapes how they view their research, because we need to acknowledge our potential biases and do everything we can to eliminate any biases that we have in our research. And the ways that we do that is include a positionality of our own worldviews. Thank you so much. Hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to ask Professor Lawless for any further questions. Thank you.